Well, thank you for welcoming me, Allison. This is near and dear to my heart. We've spent, the better part of the last 5 winters trying to make this a positive transition for us here in Walworth County, trying to do our best to do our part to reduce our salt usage. We do have large bodies of water here that we are concerned about their longevity. So I think that we have definitely made a dent in previous years. So I will get things going. All right. So before we get going, I don't know that I can see the chat, Allison, but I did have a question for everybody. Before we get started, what is the most effective method to remove snow? I hope everybody listening today and watching will know that it is mechanical removal. The plow is still the best method to remove snow. Always keep that plow down while applying granular or liquid materials. It'll help your organization reduce cost and to assist in protecting the environment. Why are we all here today? I think we all know, but this says it all right there. 1 teaspoon of salt pollutes 5 gallons of water forever. That is a daunting statement, and all of us should be concerned about the next generation and their water supply. This is a little snippet of wells throughout the state of Wisconsin, and you're definitely seeing some gradual increase of sodium pollution in those wells. So that is of great concern to us as well. And for those of us that have budgetary concerns in their positions, the cost of salt has increased 205% over the last 23 years, and I don't see that coming down anytime soon. So this picture gives me great anxiety, especially in my position and what we're trying to do here, as well as this statement that I've heard too many times in the past. If there's a problem out there with winter maintenance operations, just go throw some salt at it. This philosophy is no longer appropriate for local government organizations in today's environment. While it may have worked in the past, it has got us to our current status and our current position with polluted water. We need to be part of that solution. So I got some cool little pictures here. We got a nice little shelving plow there, dealing with some buildup on our rights of way. And below that is something you never want to see following a snowstorm, and that's bonded ice or snow to the pavement. So annually here in Wisconsin, we have no idea what's coming, but I can tell you each of the last 5 winters, we have experienced weather consistent with that of much more southern states, such as Southern Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee. The number of ice storms that we are seeing annually has increased by a factor of 3 since I started. This last winter, we had 12 ice storms. So when I first started, we had a couple big boys in 2019, but there was only 4 of them. And now that has tripled since then. We don't know what each winter has in store for us, as I'm sure you all are aware, until after it is complete. No matter what the meteorologists say, they're just guessing, and that sometimes can be frustrating. So with that, all that information in mind, how does Walworth County plan and prepare prior to each winter? We believe heavily in calibration. It is one of the most important things you can do to ensure that you know how much salt is coming out at various speeds and equipment settings. We complete this action prior to each winter, as well as if changes have been made to a truck's hydraulic system. Spreader calibration is the best way to ensure appropriate material application. So we have a fleet of 36 tandem single axles and 6x6s. We calibrate each of those every single winter prior to starting. So our belief that we should be doing this moving forward. Salt brine is a big part of our winter maintenance operation now. Obviously, the explanation for salt brine as it is a chemical solution of salt and water that has a lower freezing point than water and is a useful tool in enhancing the effectiveness of salt. The ideal concentration is 23.3%. And these little pictures show you the value of them. On the right is post-storm, after we've cleared all the roadways, and you can see there is no ice or snow bonded to the pavement. On the left is without salt brine application prior to a winter event, and you can see the snow and ice bonded to the pavement. That's a nightmare for most highway operations. So there's many ways to begin making salt brine. You can make it in a little pot. I think that's a little bit of an attempt at levity on my part. But if you want to start making your own salt brine for home applications, you can definitely make it that way. Intermediate would be, a smaller pump-driven brine maker, or you can go so far as the picture on the right, a very advanced setup with a brain box and pumps and that's quite an elaborate setup. So there's no wrong way to do it, just the determination to get started doing it. So our progression through brine makers on the left is what we started with in the late 1990s. We actually still have that out back somewhere as an asset. The picture in the middle is the Cargill system the state purchased for us in 2017. We definitely had issues with that machine and decided to go our own way in 2021 when we purchased the Henderson Brine Extreme system on the right. So there are varying levels of what you can do when making brine. And it's, as I said before, it's just the determination and willingness to get started doing it. So I'm sure people know what this graph is indicating. Definitely pre-wetting is something we also do here at Walworth County. This technology is the action of wetting the salt just before roadway application. This is probably one of the first applications for salt brine that came in. I remember at my previous organization in the early 2000s, we were doing this. The wet salt definitely stays on the road better than dry salt. It doesn't bounce and scatter as much. So it's definitely a way to save to reduce your salt usage there as well. And everybody that knows salt brine knows what these lines are, the anti-icing lines prior to a winter weather event. They are integral in our operation. This modern snow fighting technology is the action of applying brine directly to the roadway prior to an anticipated winter weather event. This measure reduces the likelihood of snow and ice bonding to the roadway. It can help you save money, time, and salt by preventing that bond. And this action also gives your crews additional time to respond, and in some cases may allow you to not respond to that event at all. So a little backstory here now. When I came to Walworth County in February of 2019, the department had just finished a working group to determine their winter maintenance stance moving forward. At that time, the group agreed upon a hybrid granular liquid stance for winter ops moving forward, and I came in to oversee that operation. Why did we decide to go with a hybrid stance? Because our cycle times here average more than 2 hours per section. This is concerning for those that know the life cycle of brine. I believe Allison said it's like a rock star. It lives quick and fast and definitely needs reapplication before you have some refreezing concerns. So as such, we are not comfortable running liquid only routes here up in Walworth County. We are not staffed for employees to have 10, 15-mile sections. Our sections can grow as large as 40 to 50 miles in to get around once. So we are not comfortable with any liquid only routes. So we'll talk about some of our equipment now. This is the older section of our fleet. These tandems are equipped. You can see the red arrow there pointing at the saddle tanks. They have 200-gallon tanks that are used for pre-wetting. These trucks are not set up for direct application. As such, they're being phased out with what follows. The ideal salt application rates that we instruct our operators to hit is between 150 and 300 pounds per lane mile, with brine application rates of 8 to 20 gallons a mile. That's the pre-wet that I was talking about. However, each setup is different and each piece of equipment has different capabilities. This is our hybrid option number 2. These are 12 to 1400 gallon brine tank inserts that we enlisted the design of NGL out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa back in 2019 to give us something that could slide into our current equipment, that we wouldn't have to, purchase super expensive trucks. We wanted a way to outfit a portion of our fleet with these slide-in units. So we began with 1,200-gallon tanks in 2019 and realized that we couldn't make full cycles with that amount. We had to go to 1,400 gallons in 2020. So we have 11 of these units throughout our fleet. These units slide in and attach for each winter, and then they're removable, and the truck is usable in its bare capacity for the rest of the year. The salt application rates that we instruct our operators to hit with these pieces of equipment are 0 to 200 pounds per lane mile for salt, and 20 to 80 gallons a lane mile for brine. You can see that these trucks also have direct application spray bars at the back. And we also designed a center line bar that floods the center line if we choose to do that. That way we can kind of let gravity take and do what it's supposed to do, and then it clears a path downward from the middle of the road. So that has proved very positive for us. Definitely, if you lose the center line of a roadway, you've lost the road. So we don't want that to happen. These final pieces, these are our first responder units out of Henderson. These are 1,200 gallon to 1,400 gallon slide-in units as well. They remove for each summer, spring, fall. We expect these trucks to hit much lower salt application rates because of the capabilities of the unit. It also has a movable direct cast spinner. If you see here the purple arrow, that can turn and hit the high side or the super, or it can turn and hit the lower side of the road. It also has a direct application spray bar. You'll see the green arrow there kind of pointing at that. So we could pre-wet the salt that's hitting the roadway, and we could direct apply as well. So these units are very useful, and they are definitely some of the more integral technology in how we plan on moving forward with winter ops. This little graph, I think, says it all. On the top is our brine use over the last 5 years since I arrived. The bottom graph is the salt use. We had a little bit of an outlier, 22-23, because we had 50% more snow than the previous year. You kind of look down on the bottom here, you'll see each winter and then the amount of snow we had next to it. So our average is right around 44 inches of snow here. And we definitely used to use a lot more salt to deal with that than what we do now. The tops of these graphs indicate the amount of salt that we used for brine production out of the overall total. So You know, we definitely have increased our salt usage to produce brine. As our biggest winter out of the last 5, we produced 1,704,000 gallons of brine in the winter of 22-23. This last winter was a little bit of an anomaly. Basically, all of our snow arrived in about a 10-day period in January. Otherwise, it was pretty limited. So we did not quite hit the 2 million gallons we were hoping to hit for the year. But, you know, with an average winter moving forward, with the increased equipment coming into our fleet, we should be able to hit that 2 million gallon mark moving forward. So how did we get there? When I came in 2019, I had a plan in place. How were we going to get the operators to buy into what this task was? So we began a 3-year initiative when I arrived to fully incorporate our hybrid winter maintenance operations stance. My plan was to, year 1 would be information only. This would be posting information on boards of what operators used for salt. Year 2 would be trying to educate them on how to properly clear roadways while using less salt and incorporating more brine. And year 3 was holding our operators accountable for the tasks that were given to them. So I'll share some of the information on how we got there now. This is some of the graphs that I posted after storms. The first year, very basic, just calling out what each operator used as an average for salt after the storm was done. So they would be instructed on how much salt to use prior to the event, and then these would be posted on how the results turned out. What I was hoping to do was create some healthy competition, and definitely by the end of the year, the operators began producing the desired results. They wanted to win. They wanted to get the lowest amount of salt used while still providing safe roadways. So that is definitely a good way to get your operators to buy in. This really busy spreadsheet, I had to create all of these by hand after every storm. It was definitely a lot of data entry. But year 2 involved posting this information for education purposes. This information presented after each storm became more in-depth, including material usage trends and individual meetings to discuss problem areas with specific goals moving forward. So we give our operators a lot of leeway when they're out on their sections. We're not the ones out there, and if they're encountering trouble, they have the ability to raise their salt pounds per lane mile, but then they're going to have to be able to explain why and let us know what were the conditions that caused that usage. Year 3 got even busier. This is when we held each operator accountable. So when those directives were given for 200 pounds per lane mile or 100 pounds per lane mile with 35 gallons of brine per lane mile, we expected them to hit those goals. So these were posted. This particular one was an end of season posting where I ranked all 23 section owners on who used the most salt, who used the least salt, and who used the most brine. If we had issues with our operators, we would have 1-on-1 or 3-on-1 meetings with all the soups and myself meeting with the operator to find out what was happening on their section and why they weren't hitting the goals we set. So those little individual meetings meant a lot to the operators because then they had the ability to explain what was happening on their sections, and we would be willing to listen and be more understanding if they weren't hitting the goals. So where are we now? We're year 5 into my tenure. We have incorporated some new telematics technology. This technology helps us live stream current equipment positions for use during winter maintenance ops. You can see on this picture, this gives an indication of where this truck has been, when his spreader or spray bar was on versus off, and has become really integral to how we track what's going on in our fleet. It also has much more accurate material usage reporting. It has built-in reports that automatically display your fleet's usage. So this one was from October to the end of the year, and it showed the entire fleet, and it showed our average rate at that time was 179.4 pounds per lane mile with an average liquid rate of 35 gallons a mile. Both hitting our goals set for all the operators prior to the year. So we were extremely happy with those results. This is another report that it generates. It has each truck, what they used for poundage, gallons of brine, deadhead time in between when they were heading back to the shop to fill up or heading to an outlying location to fill up. These reports are automatically generated, and it saved me a lot of time because after a storm, it would take me the better part of a day to fill out the data for those spreadsheets that I showed you earlier. And it definitely ate up a lot of my time in the winter. So these automatically generated reports were a lifesaver for me. Something that we decided to do 2 winters ago was to introduce solar salt into our ops to figure out if it was a more efficient way to produce brine. As we continue to innovate our salt brine production, we ran a 75-ton solar salt test in 22-23, and we saw immediate results in that test. We saw our gallons per hour production increase by a factor of 2. And then that led us to a much more extreme test this last winter, where we purchased 1,200 ton of solar salt to run a more large scale season test. The results from these tests were undeniable. I'll explain it a little further as I get into the presentation, but we plan on only using solar salt now moving forward. So why did we decide to conduct these tests a couple of years ago? What were we seeing that caused us to head down this direction? These pictures indicate what we were finding. On the left here is some stuff that was accumulating in all of our equipment lines. These are on our trucks. In the middle is some of the foreign matter and debris that was coming in our salt deliveries. And on the right is a byproduct of all of this waste that has been accumulating in our brine system. This picture on the right, it has a consistency of like a Play-Doh. And we decided to see, well, was it usable? Would it melt any snow in its current state? We dumped a whole bunch of this stuff on a snow pile, and it did absolutely nothing. So there was no melting capabilities of this Play-Doh-like consistency byproduct. And we realized that that was accumulating in all of our infrastructure, all of our brine tanks, all of our brine lines. And that was very concerning to us. So even though we purchased that new system in 2021, when using rock salt, our production levels hovered around 4,000 gallons per hour, which for us and the amount of hybrid capable equipment we have on the road was unsustainable for our operations. We had to shut down multiple times a day to clean out our brine maker, which equated to roughly every 30,000 gallons of production. It took about 2 hours to shut down, clean out, and get back going. So if we were to have back-to-back storms on, say, a 3-day period, our brine would run out and we would not be able to keep up with our application levels. We were also experiencing too much damage to our brine system. We were blowing pumps, we were valves, festo valves, you name it. This byproduct was wreaking havoc on our system. So we decided to eat the cost at the county level, as the state was not going to pay us for that additional cost of solar salt versus rock salt. We decided it was worth it for the life of our equipment to move in that direction. As we continue to grow into our hybrid capable fleet, we feel that solar salt allows us to balance application and distribution rates against production capabilities. It's a much more efficient alternative to rock salt. It is produced, not mined. So as such, it is much cleaner and has no waste. Our 1,200 ton test this past winter, we produced 960,000 gallons of brine without one single machine clean out. We ran for 10 weeks straight. We did not once have to stop production in order to clean the system, which to us said it all. We have increased our salt brine production to more than 10,000 gallons per hour, and we have reduced our labor and maintenance costs to the brine system by over 2/3. These efficiencies for us balanced the increased cost of solar salt. This final slide that I have for you today shows you where we were at prior to my arrival versus when I arrived and instituted our 3-year plan. These previous 5 years, there were some years where we approached 25,000 ton of salt use. We haven't even, I think this was our biggest winter. Yep, it was our biggest winter in the last 5, and we used just over 16,000 ton that year. This past winter, where we had an average amount of snowfall, we used just over 6,000 ton of salt throughout our whole winter. So we have definitely seen the proof is in the pudding on this one. I hate to use that phrase, but that's exactly what we've seen. Our annual salt use has dropped 40% since these best management practices have been instituted. And I think that's all I have today. Instead of questions.
All right. Thank you, Barry. That was awesome. Pretty impressive numbers there. I'm going to just end the screen share. And we got a couple questions here via email. Again, if anybody has questions, my email's in the chat, or you can just use the chat directly. So let's see, I wrote down what that was, so I don't have to look at 5 screens at once. Okay, we had a question about the pictures that you had side by side, where you said there was brine and no brine, and it looked like one road surface was totally clear, the other one had some maybe like almost like ice, looked kind of
Sure.
on it. Can you explain a little bit more, just clarify, was it the one segment of roadway had like anti-icing kind of applied pre-storm, and then they were both plowed afterwards?
Correct. Yeah. So the one that showed the clean roadway, it shows that salt brine stops the ice and snow from bonding to the pavement, so that your plows can quickly clean off the residual. The picture on the left shows that if you don't get around to it, or if it has time to bond to the pavement, you're left with using a lot more salt to try to clean that up.
Yeah, great. And then the other question that come in right away was, you were talking about a lot more ice storms. So yes. Do you have any advice for people who are also dealing with more ice?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a tricky storm, but we believe that our hybrid stance allows us to battle that a little more effectively. In those ice storms, yes, we may have to use a little bit more salt, but that instant reaction for the salt brine, removes that ice right away. You just have to have the ability to keep running and applying. That's the biggest problem that most people have, is they will apply brine and then they think it's going to work. However, within 90 minutes, that brine is going to have a chance to degrade, and now it's just water. So you have to reapply. You have to continually battle. You can't just apply and walk away. I hope that answers. Yeah. And I would say for anybody with kind of more questions about ice, that our July webinar, so kind of like the
in the heat of summer talking about ice storms, but the July webinar with Matt Whittam, he plans on kind of going a lot deeper into ice and maintenance within Walworth County on his township or town roads. Let's see, we got one more question here now that came in about how many miles are your average, or is your average route? So I think just some, like, maybe there's some disbelief out there that like, how are we carrying around this much brine? You know, like how far can you really go?
So we have 1,100 lane miles here in Walworth County. We have 700 state lane miles and 400 county lane miles. We have 23 sections to deal with that, which means 23 trucks at any one time. So if you do the math, our average section mileage averages between 40 and 50 miles per.
Okay.
So our cycle times are anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 2.5 hours to get around our sections one full time.
And then our drivers need to kind of come back and like fill up with brine after.
Sure, we have 3 facilities with large amounts of brine at them. We have our main public works shop here in Elkhorn. We also have 2 at both the northeastern portion of the county and the southwestern. We have salt domes there with 75,000 gallons at each. And then we also have 5 outlying freestanding brine tanks with pumps. So each operator has the ability to stop and fill up, depending where their sections are, to help keep your levels full. So you're not deadheading with no brine trying to go fill up. Definitely.
You've got those maximizing those satellite locations and minimizing kind of drive time. Yeah, empty.
So moving forward, our only plan is to continue to grow the size of those outlying facilities.
Cool. All right, we do have a question here. Why would you want competition for your drivers to use the least amount of salt or brine to keep roads safe? It sounds like, is that potentially more dangerous for vehicles in your area? What would you say to that, Barry?
So we would never ask our operators to create unsafe conditions. All they're asked to do is get as close to the recommended levels that we set for each storm. But like I said before, we give our operators a lot of leeway when they're out on the section to create the results we're looking for while also making sure that the roads are safe. We never would ask anybody to create an unsafe condition. Our safety statistics have continued to go down. We are better than when we started 5 years ago. Our average daily traffic incidents per crash are well down from when they were 5 years ago. So we believe that competition is just a way for us to get the guys to buy in.
Cool. Yeah. And Barry, that's a great note there. Maybe in a future presentation, like before we do the fall training, we could grab those safety statistics.
Sure.
I think there definitely is a misconception that like less total salt means like less safety, right? But what we're seeing is by bumping up brine, we're bringing down salt use and also oftentimes making the road conditions safer. A lot of the research coming out of like clear roads are showing that by maximizing the utilization of brine, we actually get better pavement conditions faster because
it's an instantaneous reaction. Yeah, the state produces safety numbers after every winter, so those numbers will definitely be available for this fall.
Cool. Awesome. Well, those are all the questions I had on email and then in the chat. Let me just check my email again. If anybody else has a question, now's your time. Please send that out to me. Keep an eye on that for a second. Otherwise, yeah, I'll just kind of put a plug in for next month. We have folks from the city of Sun Prairie in the Madison area talking about their work around salt reduction. And then I already mentioned July with Matt Whittam, kind of looking at ice and combating those ice storms that are unfortunately becoming more common, especially in southern Wisconsin. So with that, I think we're good. If people do have additional questions that come up, feel free to reach out to me and I can always or put you in touch with Barry too. I did mention that Barry's hosting a training in the fall, so we'll be publicizing that on our website shortly. If you are interested in getting yourself or your staff to a training, whether it be Walworth County or other ones, we'll have a number of them across the state this fall. So thanks for being a part of the Saltwise community, and continue doing the good work out there. And thank you so much, Barry, for sharing your story.
You're
today.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. I'm just keeping an eye on the live stream because there's a little bit of a delay. Okay.
Understood.
Awesome. Okay, we're good, Barry. Nice job. Thank you.
Hope it was